We're going live now. We're connecting. May the Wi-Fi gods bless our time
I know.
together.
Yeah.
How long do we want to go for?
Oh, like 3 or 4 hours.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Just like
That's all?
midnight.
Yeah. No,
About
I
2 hours here in Canada.
usually about an hour. I notice my attention span is shot
Well,
after about
Midnight.
60 minutes. So we'll go for that. But anyhow, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us as we have this nice little conversation with my friends Dina and Leslie. And you should see their links, their publication, their Substacks right up on the video. If you don't, you can just search for them easily enough. They're both authors, The Wisdom of Grief, Grief Unleashed. And we had a really lovely conversation, 3 or 4, 5 months ago?
who's
In
counting?
Yeah, who's counting? And actually, ladies, I may have told you this, but I knew it was a good conversation. But I actually had friends texting me before the thing was even done and uploaded to Substack, and people really enjoyed it. So no pressure on us to duplicate that. We should just, we're just whatever happens happens. But wanted to have you back and talk a little bit about grief and loss as we are now officially heading into the inexorable draw pull of Christmas holidays and all of that. But before we do that, just want to say hi and thanks for joining me. And how are you guys doing?
Good. We're we were just talking about before. We're on the roller coaster ride, and there's no of the holidays, and there's no getting off now because the ride has started.
That's
So
right.
we're working towards surrendered participation. But
There you
yeah,
go.
I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm delighted to join the two of you around two of my favorite topics, grief and actually hope.
Mm,
It really feels the other side of grief is hope. And then for us Canadians, we look at your Thanksgiving with envy often. You just seem to do it better than we do. But ours was in October, so we had a chance to get off that roller coaster ride. So I think for many of us, we're like, oh, we've already got, I don't know, a couple of feet of snow on the ground and it's cold and it's dark. So
dark,
we're
days getting shorter.
exactly. And so a lot of us in the music and the songs and for the bereaved who we are all supporting, it's like sensation overload.
Mm,
Right? And so I think there's a mixture of both the anticipation, I think I can get through this, and also the dread of, oh, do I have to get through this? How am I going to get through this?
Yeah, that is so true. There's no doubt it is. Like, I think of grief as a deep wound, like a very serious state of injury, really, especially in the early period. And I just think the holidays are irritating to the wound. There's like no doubt the holidays are amplifying of stress anyway, but then they're extremely irritating to grief. So it's sort of twofold. We have it. We have the expectations on ourselves and for how things should go, and then we have this new landscape of sometimes it's firsts for people. And that is just how do there's just how do you navigate that? I think is
mhm. Yeah, let's maybe let's start there. Like the word expectation is a really interesting word. And by the way, folks, if you see me looking down here, it's because sometimes it's easier to check out the chat on my computer rather than do it on the phone. Sorry, you get a huge glimpse of my forehead when I do
It's a
that, but
good side. It's your good
that's
side. You're all good.
oh, okay, good. Glad I have one. Um, but yeah, expectation. That's an interesting word with respect to grief and the holidays. What do you all think is the best way to help people? What should the expectation be going into that? Maybe Leslie, let's start with you since you brought it up.
yeah. I always find that when you're in a new situation or a relatively new situation, if it's like your first, like we were saying, that you definitely want to adjust expectations accordingly going into it. Just understand, like, hey, this is going to be, and it's even like a one line you can even take. Somebody on Substack, I think it was Katie Serbian, had an article about this, but she said, choose like a one line to yourself that you have that you say to yourself, and then you maybe it's like your mantra, it's like your thing for the day, and it's like about self-compassion. But it's kind of like, yeah, I this is a heavy time, and I appreciate how I'm showing up with courage, or I'm just showing up. Like, I'm proud of myself for showing up. Like, it's a little bit of a cheerleading situation because we're going into this thing that we know is gonna be stressful. So I think about that. And I also think self-protection, self-protection, self-protection. For
Mm.
because we're wounded in this way, and this is touching the wound. This is irritating the wound. So self-protection to me is go in with a pre-planned, like, as much as we can pre-game it, we're good. Like,
Mhm.
it almost, protective conversation, have an exit strategy, have a pre-planned statement about how to answer the question, like how you're doing, like, because that's going to come up and you're going to have that awkward moment. But if you have it to go to, you don't have to kind of feel the freeze that can sometimes happen when you're caught off guard. So yeah.
That's good. How about you, Dina? What do you think of with respect to expectation?
Well, I really appreciated what Leslie was saying. And I think there's a difference between those of us who are babies in our grief. You know, if it just happened over the last year, let's say, I was just talking to a client today, in fact, about just that. And yeah, I use that word. And you know how, like, she just started to cry. I said, what do you think a 4-month old would expect of herself going into the holidays? She's like,
Mhm.
oh gosh. It's like that self-compassion that you were speaking to, Leslie, became more available to herself when we acknowledged that she was trying to figure out who she is while she's trying to think about how she's going to navigate the upcoming holiday without her mom in it. And her father had died when she was 19. So now she feels like an orphan. And she's like, can I even use that word? Like, well, does that word help? So I think there's a lot for people who are newly bereaved to think about because while they're actually processing the experience, right? Their bodies and their minds, their social networks. They're having to deal with the onslaught of the holidays, and it's often overstimulations. But I love your prompts, Leslie, around going in and having a plan. I
Mhm.
also think making a list, checking it twice, figuring out who's on your, the good people list, mainly the people in your life that you can show up with authentically and then the people who you might either want to avoid this Christmas and not say yes to the gatherings because they're just not part of your grief inner circle. And this is no judgment against them. They just don't, maybe they haven't had a loss, so they don't know how to be in that kind of tender space. And then I would say for those of us who are more mature in our grief, I'm at a stage now with my younger sister dying 24 and a half years ago that I'm I actually have a practice now. It's like, how do I want to celebrate Tracy?
Mm.
And my dad, who passed away 3 years ago, it's like, how do I want to honor him this Christmas? And even the invitation with this woman that I was speaking to earlier, asking her, so your mom's passed. It'll be 5 months by the time Christmas comes. How might you like to celebrate her? She's, and the visceral reaction, I mean, I still can. Like,
Mm.
well, what would that even look like for you?
Mm.
Hmm. What about you, Jonathan?
Well, I was just thinking as Leslie was talking, that as she was talking about encouraging people to say things and get yourself ready. I've read a couple times recently, and I haven't done any research on this. I'm not sure if this is anecdotal or it's data driven. I think it's the latter, but I've come across an increasing number of posts and articles about talking to yourself and speaking out loud to yourself. And what they're saying certainly matches up with my reality, but basically what they were saying is when you speak to yourself, it is a way, provided you're doing it generously and with compassion, as you were talking about, but it is a way to kind of reset neurologically, possibly neurologically. It's almost like, when you think about breathing, you automatically can just kind of feel your body slow down. And so I thought, yeah, that rings true. And I've realized the last couple of weeks that I do that. And so So I think an expectation is that it's okay to talk to yourself, and not only that, to lament and grieve, but then also take opportunity, if you can, to let yourself know something as simple and basic as, I got this. All right, Jonathan, here we go again. You've been through this before. You're probably not going to lose it over this one. I mean, you might, but you're probably not. It's going to be okay. So, just that kind of stuff. I suspect. Again, I haven't done the research yet, but I suspect that the data probably backs it up too, and that could help you just process anything in life, not least of which is grief during these times.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say, like, as time goes by, we get more practiced at that, and we get more practiced at, like, the self-care that's involved in tending to this long-term chronic injury, basically. At the beginning, it's very acute, but then as the years go by, it's chronic, and maybe it just becomes sort of rote that we do these things. But it's also strikes me that that's really related to like nervous system regulation because a lot of loss is involves some kind of trauma. So the body goes into that like fight, flight, or freeze, that dysregulation, and sometimes I think even recognizing the dysregulation, and that can happen long term too, because we're going back to the if the loss happened within the family, when we're with the family, we're going back to the site of the wound, the site of the accident, the injury. And so it's like the heart of it. And so even if it's been 20 years, it's still there, it's still there for us. So I think just recognizing the nervous system dysregulation, like, okay, am I tense right now? And attending to it in that way too, like, or am I shallow breathing, like, or do I have that sense of urgency, that kind of like all or nothing thinking that comes with the fight, flight, or freeze, and if I do, I can engage in the opposite, just a deep breath, or just a, okay, let me relax my body a little bit, or even just like let me engage in nuance, so it's not all the good or all bad. Let me see the full reality of this, the gray area, and just maybe sort of accepting that nuance or engaging with that nuance that the holidays, okay, they're going to be both very, very sad and that there's going to be a lot of love.
Yeah, my
Mhm.
24-year-old, I had to think about how old he was, last week just told his mom and I, 2 things can be true at once, and we were talking about something else, but I just love that he said that, and I was like, "Okay, yeah, that's the nuance that you're talking about." Like, it's both the happiness and the sad, and the full human experience is all of it together.
But that is calming to the nervous system because that is truth. And when the nervous system hears the truth, the nervous system starts to feel safe. And then it's like, oh,
Incredible.
yeah, that is so true. I forgot.
Nice.
It's really beautiful to hear the two of you speak to this. It's like my love language is being like stroked right now. And so many of the people that are listening often, because there's so much illiteracy when it comes to grief and loss and anything death related, we have this fear. So we come to the experience often like Bambi on ice, right? And so we're learning about the experience while we're processing the experience, which makes it, cruel and unusual punishment. I often give the example of imagine saying to a birthing woman as she's, she's like eight, you know, about to give birth to a child, don't worry. We'll let you know about what to do when the time arrives. It's like this is what we do to people who are dying or people who are bereaved. And I do think there's a great book by Mary Frances O'Connor, right? It's called The Grieving Brain. She's written another one called The Grieving Body, and it gives us a sense of I think comfort and confidence when we're navigating this unknown territory, and then being able to have the language, the community, and a sense of agency that you spoke to, Jonathan, right? Like, am I going crazy is often what clients say to me. And when we can help them breathe, when my body is calm and relaxed, then they feel that. They feel me feeling them, these mirror neurons that we know is available to us. And what Leslie said is so true. If it's a grief that's shared in a family, when we come back and gather at during the holidays, all of us are like Bambi on ice, especially if it's newer and we haven't cemented kind of new practices, new rituals in a tradition that had our person there with us. So when I share language like it's likely that you're going to have these stugs leading up to and during the holidays and even when you're gathering. So a stug is this Therese Rando, right? These sudden temporary upsurges in grief. When you give language like that to someone, like, oh, permission granted. But these stugs are also sudden temporary upsurges in grace. We can also have, as you said, two things can be true at once. And when we feel our grief being met, something shifts, right? My body relaxes. I feel like I'm being witnessed, not judged. And then my body says, okay, this upsurge in grief can dissipate. But too often we are encouraged to suffocate and suppress, not express what is a natural part of being human. Grief is love, right? So how do we encourage people to show up in their full authentic self during a time when, let's be truthful, most people don't want to see us wearing our tears on our sleeves, right? They would rather we show up with the ball of wine and cheese and the baguette and say, hey, here I am. So I don't know, any thoughts on how we can be more our true selves with people during these holiday celebrations?
Well, first of all, I hope people just heard what you said. The grief and the grace, the G can stand for either one, and they're interchangeable. Like they're they're two sides of the same coin. It's not as if you have to get away from the grief to get to the grace, but the grief is a means of grace. And it's so counterintuitive and so weird and so discombobulating and disorienting that I hope people heard that. And before I answer your question, I wanted to ask you, Dina, what that reminded me of is we're not trying to fix it. We're not necessarily trying to recover. We were talking about grief recovery earlier on, and you had a visceral reaction to that. We've been hearing more about grief recovery. Tell us a little bit about your response to that phrase and what you think about that word.
Well, a couple of things. I mean, my origins is in the world of elite sport, right? So when we think of recovery for athletes, they are about getting back to their baseline, back to their strong self, back to who they were before the injury occurred. And so, as I've been thinking about this, I got curious. I'm a leadership coach. I'm like, what is it about the word grief and recovery? And so I do think it implies a sense of coming back to who you were before. At least these are the conversations I'm having with people. And so if we lose, I think we just have to be really mindful to language, right? Because a lot of the clients I work with, their sense is, I want to get back to who I was before, because that's what everybody wants to. They don't want to see me sad. And when we invite people to explore, well, is it possible that you're changed now by this experience? And while you are grieving this loss and figuring out, how am I going to get through the day? I'm also trying to figure out, who am I now that I've suffered through and learning to live with this loss. So, so I think that's one factor. The other factor is so many people aren't familiar with continuing bonds, which is a beautiful theory that I would say deeply, deeply changed my life when I
Say that,
became aware of it.
say that again.
Continuing bonds. This
Oh, yeah.
is Nickman's work and Silverman and their colleagues. So continuing bonds is the I think the beautiful way that I would summarize this is death ends a life, and people would object to that as well, but it doesn't have to end a relationship. So while our person dies and the pain is so visceral and it's all encompassing, as Leslie was saying, I think it also over time, and I'm an example of that, I found a way to reconfigure a new relationship with my sister Tracy.
Mm.
And that is where hope and grace live for me, right? I'm careful not to prescribe, but I do find when we use language that's more sanitized, more clinical, more westernized, maybe the whole idea of give me a prescription for how I can get over my grief, That's where recovery comes from, the way that I interpret it. And when I've tested this with some of my clients, they've had that same kind of response. So I'm curious about the two of you and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when people are reaching for that, when they reach for that word, I think of how I interpret the word when I hear recovery, because sometimes I'll say loss is a serious injury and grief is part of the recovery. Like grief is the medicine, and it is. It's what we're hoping to get in recovery and restoration, or to restore. Maybe a better word is to restore
Mhm.
our equilibrium, because I think it's just so much upheaval of
Mhm.
who we thought we were. It is a complete identity shift because we are changed. Um, and some of the ways that we're changed can be quite hopeful and beautiful. And some of the ways that we're changed are going to hurt forever.
Yeah.
And so both those are true. It's another like both and situation. I loved
Mhm.
the grace and the grief together. This idea that we are becoming very familiar with the bittersweet, the bitter and the sweet when we're in grief. We become that really expands our ability to hold that, and that is actually a beautiful byproduct of loss. But yeah, and I've been talking about this recently because how people do like a gratitude journal. So my new thing is to do like along the lines of continuing bonds. Mine is like a connection journal. So it's like my intention is to write down, like I'll say to clients, like write down 3 times when you feel like some form of connection or synchronicity or whatever it might be with your loved one. And so it sets the expectation of I'm going to experience those. So it sets us in a state of receptivity to find that ongoing connection, because that's such an important part of finding grace and finding equilibrium again. But so I'm keeping a synchronicity journal or whatever we want to call it, a
Nice.
connection journal, and that's my thing this holiday.
I love it. It's like you have to name it to tame it. And when you name that, the first thing that came to mind was, cardinals. When my dad died, my three kids came to say goodbye to him. And my youngest daughter, went to play the piano just across from where my dad was resting. And then my eldest daughter was looking out the window. And wouldn't you know it? One cardinal came.
Mm.
Then a second cardinal came just outside the window and perched right outside the little window. And then a butterfly. So for me, the symbolism was the red cardinal was my grandmother coming to bring her son home, my dad. And the butterfly has been the symbol of my sister. It's what adorns my book. It's what's behind me here. So I'm like, I get shivers when I recount that story, Leslie and Jonathan, because it's true. If we look at and we stay open, the symbols and signs are everywhere.
It's really good, and my brain is going lots of different directions with this word recovery. Uh, like, one direction I'm going is it seems to me like the human condition is we spend so much of our time trying to cover up, like, either shame or embarrassed or, insecure or not feeling safe, so we're constantly covering up, and for our religious folks, at least in the Christian tradition, that is a piece of that Genesis story when, with the whole Adam and Eve and the coats that God makes them, and there's a whole interesting
Mhm.
so recovery, yeah, it can be a negative thing, like, I almost feel like grief has helped me uncover, discover, disrobe all these fabricated things. But also, here's where another thing it's going is like recover, makes me think of going back. So yeah, I don't think I'm never going to go back to that person that I was. And I don't think that's helpful no matter what you're going through. But what was fascinating about grief is that it peeled back the veneer of, oh, that things actually are in control. I don't really think they are. I think everything is super undomesticated and wild. And part of the job of being human is to kind of order your world. There's nothing wrong with that until you obsess about it so much that you fall into the trap of thinking that you're safe and you're protected. And so maybe a piece of the grief that is helpful to get back to in some way, though I don't really love that phrase, so I'm playing with this, is just getting back to that idea that of oh no, humanity, like there is so much wildness that's going on, and it's a healthy thing to keep a bit of that in mind. If you keep too much of it in mind, it will kind of drive you crazy. And I think I've lived there probably as much or more than maybe I needed to. But I don't know. Those are rambling thoughts uh, about the word, and now I'm going to have to play with it.
Well, I love that. I think the invitation for me when we deconstruct, I'm a journalist by trade. So the language for me is so important.
Hmm.
I've noticed that my capacity to go in and be precise with the emotion, the experience, the intention is so important. So when you said recover, I'm like, oh, there's also the other side of it. As I'm going to get the warm blanket, the weighted
Right.
blanket, and find some restoration, which is I
Right.
think what Leslie was speaking to, which helps me connect to the word of it's Dr. Alan Wolfelt. I studied under him, one of my many teachers, and he talks about the companioning model, right? And then he also talks about reconciliation and grief. And in Canada, as I'm sure you can appreciate, my US friends, um, with truce and reconciliation, right? We've had to grapple with the harm caused to Indigenous peoples that were here long before settlers came, right? We colonized, we conquered, we stole. And so as someone who inherited many of those benefits and privileges, right, just by virtue of me being white-skinned, I think part of what I'm also, reckoning with is the word reconciliation actually means to make myself whole again.
Mm.
So making myself whole again is a process of discovery and figuring it out, and also recognizing that these pieces of my shattered heart, when I bring them back again together, they're not going to be the same pieces of who I was before the trauma happened, which is that wound to the soul that Leslie was speaking to. So the act of picking it up and discovering and stumbling and working through the process, that's where, from my experience, has been the gift. I've actually fallen into love with the new me as a result of being with this pain that rendered me to my knees. Right. So I think there's so much to what you've said there, Jonathan. I'm really grateful.
Yeah, it's like, what is that phrase by Pema Chodron? Comfortable with uncertainty. I
Mm.
see it as just becoming comfortable with disequilibrium or with change as a state of as a constant. Change is the constant.
Yep.
And I
Amen.
at first found that to be very upsetting early in my grief, like change, this kind of change. I don't want this change. I don't want this. This is horrible. This feels unlivable, unmanageable, intolerable. And then I feel like over time I've become um I I find comfort in the fact that change is a constant, because when you're really feeling like that, you can be assured it is not going to last.
Right.
It is going to change.
Right.
And
Yeah.
even though you can't see it and you're like, okay, this is forever, this is forever, this is forever, because that's how we
Yeah.
feel when we're in the emotional storm of grief. It's not, it's just the truth that we can actually take comfort a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, the change piece, some people take it and go, "Oh, it's depressing because I can't ever get to this spot and keep it safe." But what that means is that there's also always hope that something new is around the corner, and I do think that's just a piece of it. Man, I just want to pause for a second. Our friend Scott, they just sounds like his brother-in-law just passed away yesterday. So Scott, we're thinking of you. If I read that right, good grief. So bless you, man.
Mm,
Tough time.
yeah.
Yeah.
What about holiday time traditions? Maybe we kind of already said that a little bit, but are there any traditions that you've started since your well, I started to say since your loved one passed away? I don't know if you ladies are like me. I've had so many that it's not just been one event, so it's kind of a whole conglomeration of things, which is a part of my problem. But
Mm.
any new traditions that you have started that maybe previously you didn't, or
Mhm.
anything that you found to be helpful?
I had this thing happen to me and this was when my late husband was dying, and that was 10 years ago. So, I I don't know why this came to be, but I was like he was in hospice and I was like at the hospital and there was a moment where everyone had gone home and it was just me and I was with him alone and I was really saying goodbye. And out the window was really the most beautiful sunset. Like
Mm.
and something inside me just said thank you for this day. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm thankful for this day, not this day in the circumstances of this day, but just having this day. So I that is a practice for me. That is like a ritual. I think of a ritual as so important because it's just a micro action that kind of I don't know, it just makes it a little easier to take that next step ahead when you are a 4-month-old trying to figure out how to walk for the first time, in this landscape. But I would just try to tap into that feeling I had. Like I had a feeling of thank you. I had a feeling of gratitude in that moment. I wasn't grateful that he was dying. I was grateful I don't know, that somehow the grace and the grief, there it was all together. So I say thank you for this day. I do the
Nice.
sunset and I just say thank you for this day. Just thank you for the privilege of being alive because even in my worst pain, after losing people, I am grateful. I feel like I feel like it is a privilege to be living this full catastrophe that is life. So that's my little ritual.
Nice. How about you, Dina?
Well, I'm just so touched, Leslie. I have a visual now of you, holding your husband's hand, late husband's hand, and then looking up and there's the sunset, reminding you of the day, right? Seize the day, carpe diem, and how exquisite that is, the duality of being a human, watching one person die and then one person appreciate life. That's so powerful. Um, One of the things that I did early on, so Tracy died in February. So that following Christmas was so hard because it was the first Christmas and the numbness it had worn off a little bit, right? Because we were 11 months in, figuring out how to fumble and, stumble our way into the holidays without her there. So one thing I did early on, and this has become a beautiful ritual. And as Leslie has shared, rituals are intentional acts that bring about some form of symbolism and meaning. That's what ritual does. It's different than routine. We do these things, we fall into them, right? But we step into ritual and there's that consciousness about it. So for me, um, that year, I went out and got an ornament and I put Tracy's name on it. So every year that we put, that ball up, I'm like, oh, there it is, the upsurge in grief. And at the same time, because it has her death date on it, it's a reminder, she's still here and she's still shaping my life and that of my children and my mom now and her son, and grandson. But it was really powerful for me to go out and get this ornament that made me think of my sister. And the counter to that is, I would also go out to her cemetery, like her graveside, and write a letter to her and put it in our childhood stocking and lay it at her grave. And I did that for 10 years after she died. So every Christmas Eve, I would find my way there. So hard. And the kids would be in the back seat really young and babies. Um, and then the cemetery one year, because of liability, they locked it. They locked the cemetery. And I was unstoppable. I dug my way underneath because going over it was too hard. And I was so upset. I was crying. And I realized, you know, these traditions, these things they can become anchors. And I realized, okay, I think I'm ready to let go of this tradition, this ritual, and then I'm going to give rise to something else. Because I did call the cemetery and then the caretaker said, well, with insurance, people can fall and slip. I'm like, I don't care. I want to see my sister. So it was like a sign. I think it was actually a sign, a beautiful intervention to say, hey, you can move through this and maybe come up with a different ritual. And so I did.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's brave. I don't know. I
Yeah.
feel like there's a ritual thing. I guess we could call it ritual, but I feel like it probably goes unnoticed by a lot of us, but we all probably do it, which is the thing where we almost like borrow their eyes for a minute. Like we intentionally notice the thing they would have loved and engage with it for like that moment. Like, well, it's like, okay, well, we know they always loved to, light the candles at this certain time. So
Right.
we totally have to eat this food because
Mhm.
Right.
and even if you're noticing that to yourself and like you're just taking a little walk and you're just like, okay, well, this is the thing that they would have loved. So I'm just going to appreciate that
Yeah.
with them, in that way. But I think
Yeah.
we all probably do a lot of that without even almost acknowledging it as a ritual of connection.
Yeah, it's a good point. We were playing a game last week over Thanksgiving, and our oldest boy said, he referring to his sister, our daughter who died, if she had been here, that she would have loved that game. And I was thinking, actually, I think I said it out loud after he said that. I said, I think we always say that every time we play a game. We say, if Quincy were here, this would have just gone absolutely full catastrophe, to borrow Leslie's language, like just full on because she was so wild. But to your point, that's you wouldn't necessarily call that a traditional ritual, but it is something that kind of helps us stay
Yeah.
grounded, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. It's like these, in grief speak, we talk about linking objects, right?
Mhm.
But these are linking traditions, linking experiences that have us stay connected or become like for feeling as if our person's there. And in a way, it's so deeply honoring. I don't know about you, but I've had people bristle or have this aversion when you talk about your person's name. I lean in. It's like, do you want to talk about your person? Like, what do you miss most? And what would they be doing if they were here? And what would be their favorite gift? And I always find people's eyes come alive. There's a dullness, right, to our eyes when we're newer in our grief experience. But when somebody says, hey, what's their name? What do you miss most? What don't you miss? I always get a chuckle. They're so
Yes.
not expecting that question. I'm like,
Right.
what
Yes.
don't
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
miss that my sister's tattling on me, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mm.
I like that.
Yeah. I think like the family piece, because it is such a family holiday that, like, as we were saying, like, if it is the loss of somebody in the family, that I think in the early days of grief, that actually being together is its own trigger. And so that's really hard for people. Like closeness is awkward because things have changed. We're changed. The dynamics of the family have changed, and we haven't figured out how the family's gonna rearrange itself around the current new circumstance, like, and it's almost like I try to think of it like a metaphor. Like I remember when my mom died by suicide, and we got together as a family. I thought of her as the centerpiece of our family. Like she was the bright, bold centerpiece in the middle. Like she added the pop of bright color, and like she just amped it up like another like a degree in a positive way. So, for me, I did not know that was just such a hole, and being together was so hard. And so people, it's like we're having to walk through the pain, see through the pain, look through the pain to find what's still there in the family, which is love, to find what's still there. And I don't even think of it as like, I think we have to just, it's it's like it's not ignoring the pain. It's like when you get that uh, instruction in meditation, they say acknowledge the thoughts, but just continue to look for the space around the thoughts as well. Like what else is there as well? It's like we acknowledge the pain, but we have to continue to look, remind ourselves to look for what else is there too. And the easiest thing to find is the love, I guess. And maybe
Yeah.
just maybe it's like making a new metaphor. Like I don't know.
I really appreciate that, and I'm speaking really right now to all the people that are listening or will listen. I know that when I was a new bereaved person, and for years and years later, I didn't have the language or the framework to normalize what my body and my heart and my soul knew was a natural human part of expressing my love for what I've lost, right? And so it was so helpful to fall into this framework that normalizes two things. One is we're going to do the grief work, and our orientation is more on the pain and the loss and the grief and the sadness. And then there's also life work, and that's the restoration work. So if we, can remember that there's room for both, because I often find, I don't know about the two of you, that I have clients who come in really guilty because they're now dancing in the space of their life work.
Hmm.
And my question to them is, well, do you feel there's a balance? Because in the early days, you're spending more time in grief work than you are in life work. But I have found that some clients feel guilty when they're not doing all the grief work. Like, shouldn't I be grieving more? I'm like, well, how are you feeling about that? And then I have some clients who suppress their grief if it's too pain, so they bottle it up. So we create a little metaphor around a grief case that they can, put all of their pain. And as long as they promise and have a practice to go in and give themselves permission to explore the grief, then that gives them put it in the agenda. I have some clients who are very utilitarian. So if it's not in their agenda, it's not happening. And then I have other clients who they just don't know how. Like, how am I supposed to grieve? I've never done this before. So it's almost like um, teaching them the fundamentals of ABCs and one, two, threes through questions, right? Through these powerful questions that gives them the confidence to trust their bodies, which is what you, Leslie, were inviting us to do really early on, right? Like, what's the texture of your grief? If grief was a persona, what would it be? Like, I find a lot of really interesting ways to get people to befriend their grief. And it is such a disruption because most of the people in our lives will not go there, right? That's why the three of us are doing the work we're doing, because we actually this is fuel for me. Being in service of someone who's in pain is actually fuel for my soul, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of great stuff y'all just both said. I've thought of this 2 or 3 times, so I think I'll just say it too. I would love to give people permission, and myself as well, to not how do I wanna say this? Okay, what I've discovered in the last year more than ever before, that I haven't felt as grateful as I would have liked, I would have thought after all the loss I've been through. But
Mm,
so I just started doing this thing where when I pray, I would just say something like, "Okay, I don't feel grateful, but I wanna feel grateful." And then I would start telling myself, um, and I think it's true. I think actually just the posture of wanting to be a grateful person
right.
and to be thankful is probably akin to actually being grateful. And it
Mm,
it begs the question, like, what is gratitude? I think sometimes we think it's a feeling. Well, certainly it is a feeling, but it might be more than that. It might be an intention to live a particular way despite what you're feeling. At least that's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm banking on
mm,
because I'm kind of embarrassed, and I know I shouldn't be with the two of you, but I'm kind of embarrassed that I'm not more grateful at times.
mm.
So I just want to tell the universe or God, whoever's listening, I want to be.
I love it. And you know what? It's speaking a little bit to that sort of like the word we were, the toxic recovery piece,
Mm,
meaning we feel like somehow we're not supposed to still feel not great sometimes, you know,
mhm,
and that's an ongoing sort of forever thing that we just learn how to manage better with time. That's or
Mhm,
more, we have more familiarity. But I
mhm,
love the intention piece. Like I'm not feeling it now, but I'm intending to feel it. Like
yeah,
I want to feel it. And so there you go. I'm putting it out there because the intention has such organizing power in our subconscious, to so it is akin to it. So isn't it? Yeah. And I don't even think of it as like I think trying to put ourselves sometimes I'll say to clients like just find anything that you're grateful for. It doesn't have to be
okay,
like anything that is related to your loss. It's just something, like, okay, you saw a beautiful flower and you felt okay. That's stepping yourself up the ladder. So it's more like feeling the feeling of the thing that you want. I
Mm.
don't know if it's fake it till you make it. It's not. It's intention. I love the intention piece. It's like that
Uh-huh.
that I always think about the visualization study, the basketball study. Do you guys know that study where they like do the free throw study?
Oh, yeah.
So like they did that 6-week study where some people were doing free throws for half an hour for 6 weeks, and then some people were imagining making free throws,
Yeah.
and then some people were doing nothing. And the people who were doing the free throws improved their free throw shooting by something like, 26%. And the people who visualized, just imagined that they were making free throws, improved it by like 23% or something. So, okay, maybe it is.
Yeah.
You are grateful. You're
Yeah.
already grateful.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
exactly. Well, you're speaking my Olympian language because that's what they do with athletes, right? We don't have
Yeah.
snow 12 months out of the year, so we put biometrics on the athletes and we have them visualize going down the race, right? Down the mountain, and we see them and their muscles are being flexed, and we see the parallels between their imagination and the actual similarities of when they are racing are the same.
Mm.
Wow.
So the power of the mind, to your point, is so true. So if we can visualize, a couple of things that are arising in me. One is I would connect with my sister and my dad, but not so much my dad, my sister in my dreams.
Mm.
And that's the unconscious, right? So I would wake up, I would cry. I wasn't a crier, so I would often, my body would just needed to release it. So I would wake up crying. So I think there's something really powerful about the mind and the grieving brain and what has to happen for all these pathways that are routines and relationships and traditions and the time required to create new routines, new relationships, new beliefs, right? And I also, when I was toying with this idea of gratitude, what sprung up inside of me was hope. And my sister's little charity that we did right from the beginning was called Tracy's Hope. And so my relationship with hope feels really like beautiful and deep and profound and shifting. And it feels like what you were speaking to, Jonathan, felt like gratitude, felt similar in texture. It's like, it's yes is preferred future, but I don't, for me, my relationship with hope is, in the beginning, if someone's been diagnosed with a life limiting illness, often they hope for a cure. And when that's not available, they hope for more time. And when that's not available, they hope for being free. And when those, the days are nearing their death date, it's like, I hope I die with dignity with my friends and family surrounding me. So there's movement to hope. And you were inspiring me because I thought, well, there's movement to gratitude too.
Yeah.
Gratitude in my body, gratitude for the day, gratitude for this experience, gratitude for the fact that my husband's making us dinner tonight, gratitude for some of the little tiny things, the scent of this candle, right? Like that's what brings me joy. And it's that, I think it's the gratitude actually for me as I'm talking this through, gives more space for hope in these dark times, right? Because there's so much not to be hopeful for. And yet, to me, when more people, if we link arms and say, let's create a gratitude revolution, I think that will double down on hope.
Mhm.
Hmm, that's beautiful.
Mhm.
I have a question for you, Jonathan, because it's a spiritual question. And maybe this is the answer to as we're talking about this, but I think about the spiritual sort of crisis of grief, the worldview crisis, whatever your orientation is, it just gets thrown up. Everything you believe you thought you understood about the world, oftentimes falls apart. Like it didn't work out that way. Bad things happen to bad people, good things happen to good people. Not so much.
Right.
So now what? Like, how do I figure this out? And what kind of, if you believed in a God, what kind of God would have this happen? All those questions. But now I'm wondering if it's, this same thing where you just set that, you say, I don't know what to believe, but I want to believe something. I
Yeah.
want to have my view restored. Like I want to have my something restored, faith in the world, faith in humanity, whatever it is that your faith is.
Mm.
I don't know. I don't know what your experience with that spiritual part
Oh
is.
my word, yeah, it's like my whole life. It's a really great question, and it taps into a whole bunch of things. So yeah, I was a pastor for most of my life. And I still think of myself like I talk about this a lot with other pastors, and part of the work I do with is this organization that's now called the Curian dot network. And we're basically curating groups of pastors and chaplains and theologians and thinkers who have gone through massive theological change to the degree that their former ways, ecclesiological settings have uninvited them from the tribe, as it were. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of trauma there. There's a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. So we talk a lot about the calling. Like my calling still feels the same as it did when I was whatever, 15, 16 years old, but the shape of
Mhm.
it is so much different. It's gone through so much change. And
Yeah.
it's it's primarily what you're basically getting at. It really was about and is about, okay, who do I think God is and what is going on? And I'll just say real briefly because it's a it's a long subject, but and maybe this will be helpful for someone. But yeah, I agree with kind of with what you said. Like when our daughter died, I was kind of like all bets were off. My partner and I, both she and I, we were like, it doesn't matter whether I'm pastoring and I'm in good standing with whatever, and I'm supposed to be theologically smart. Like this is a whole new level of thinking about who I am and who God might be and what love means and what faith is and all these things. And so it caused a lot of trouble in our congregation and our denomination. Um,
Mhm.
but we were committed to being honest. And I've always felt like, yeah, it's not that I stopped believing in God. A lot of people from that old tradition said that I did, but that wasn't it at all. Nor did I even want to stop believing. But I did stop believing in an old kind of God who, to connect with some of the things we're talking about, was a very static deity that lived outside of time and space and who wasn't a part of this movement, this flow, this change that the three of us have been talking about. Like that is reality, this interconnectedness. If love is not interconnected and in the flow, I don't think it's love. Like if you live outside of time and space and you already know what's going to happen, how do you how do you call it love? There's no risk to that. So I kept being committed and recommitted to the idea of love because it was so near and dear, even in the midst of the grief. And yes, I wanted to believe in something, but I was I shouldn't say totally fine. I got to the point where I was fine with not believing in the former thing, that the way the tradition told me it was. But I just kind of went to a deeper thing. Maybe that's back to the recovery thing. Like I was going back primally in a humanity kind of way, back to the depth of the thing, which I think is love. Hmm. Wow.
Mm.
I don't know
It's
if I answered that very well, but that's a great question.
You answered it beautifully, and I think, like, it sounds to me like and that you have had an expansion of faith in some way.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
mean, I think that is one of the positive byproducts
Yeah.
of 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 loss. I think it
Yeah.
can be, and yeah, and then I also feel like doubt is a part of the spiritual path.
That's right.
There has to be room for that, I guess. I don't know.
Well, just think about like you've probably made this connection too. Like we talk about faith, like we'll say that person is such a great person of faith, and then colloquially, what we're saying is they have no doubts, like they've got it all together. It's completely
Yeah.
like it's a performative contradiction. You can't
Right.
have faith without doubt.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So I have so much freaking doubt still right now, but yes, it's situated in this large thing of faith, and so they both just kind of live there together.
Really beautiful. You know what I appreciate about this way that you were answering is it reminds me that often when we're struggling with life and it could be a finite loss, but it could also be non-finite losses like endings of relationship. I think of
Right.
divorce,
Right.
uh, people that are forced out of, forced to retire, for instance, if their whole way of being and known way of being is their work environment. And with cuts in Canada, anyway, there's a lot of workforce adjustment. So I'm seeing people, their assumptive world is completely shattered. And it was going to what you were saying. Um, so for me, when that shattering occurs, that's when truth is revealed.
Yep.
That's the deep, dark night of the soul. Like, who am I? What is the meaning of this? And,
Mhm.
set God aside for a moment. It feels like it does come down to the being with me. And so, there's Aristotle's first know thyself. It's like, I think first we have to love ourselves. Then we can, if we accept ourselves as love, as beings of love, as children are born into, and we become really clear about all the itty bitty, what committees inside of our head that keep us stuck and small and insignificant, because it's convenient, isn't it?
Mhm.
What we start to do, Jonathan, which you so beautifully shared, is start to question these paradigms, these schemas, um, that are really were not designed by us and for us.
That's
You
right.
know, so
Yeah.
keep curiosity, keep the questioning mind, and it's not about being divisive. What I heard you speak to, and Leslie, you nailed it. It's like the expansion,
Mhm.
right? Someone I love died, and now I'm questioning who I am. And we have to remember, if we believe in God, then religion was constructed, designed by man, man, people. So of course it's flawed and it's partial.
Right.
So I just really appreciate, because when we are grieving, we are often invited into those deeper, darker, harder questions that are all about, you know, humanity and
Yeah.
what it means to be human.
Yeah, and if we're looking for, like, I just am always looking for consistency, even though I understand that life is change and change is constant, and we were just discussing that. I would like something more consistent, and the only thing I've landed on that is consistent and literally is never wrong
Uh-huh.
is love, self-love, love. When is it ever not applicable?
Right.
Right.
Like, I can't think of a time, so that gives me some sense of, like, I like
Uh,
that. I like the
Yeah.
amen.
solidity of that.
Uh-huh.
That's
Yeah.
about the only
I
solid
like
thing
it
I've
good.
found. Yeah.
That's
I love
right.
So it's gotta be something, and it does something, and having that, you know, expansion or having that understanding or having that sense of love, it's calming to our nervous system, it's calming to our wound.
Yeah, you just said that's interesting. We gotta have something, and I think that's true. I have atheist friends. I would have never imagined this 10 or 15 years ago, but I do have atheist friends, not as many as I wished I had, who have told me, and I don't think I ever got it until the last few years, that for them, well, I say I got it, but I also still have some doubts about the atheist. Like, so for many of them, they might say something like they're trying to convince me that there is nothing. It's
Uh-huh.
like you die and that's it, and it's nothing. And I do get the sense that some of them feel like, oh, there's peace in that. Like I don't have to be caught up in the like risk of hope and love anymore. It's over and I'm done. And I get that. Also, I want to say that's a bit like having faith too. You're having faith in nothing
Exactly.
is a bit like having faith in something. So I think, and I don't
Yeah.
want to be disrespectful to the atheists, but I think it's really possible that there's still kind of, I'm going back to your phrase, you got to have something. Like the nothing has become something for them.
Yeah.
And I think you have to have something. And I would say, as at least as a Christian, like what better thing would you want than love? Shockingly, a bunch of Christians have told me that they have something better. And then they make up some, dogmatic doctrinal thing that, Dina, to your point, that men and women made up. And you're like, okay, yeah, but is that deeper than love? Is that more honorable than love? I don't think so, and some that doesn't mean that some of those beliefs and doctrines are necessarily wrong, but love is a lot more challenging and comforting and critiques how I think and feel, and for me, it's turned into I didn't know this, but it's basically turned into my life's work, trying to vet what I think love is, and I think it's worthy of someone's work.
It's such a beautiful full circle conversation because when we talk about grief, we grieve because we love.
That's right.
If we didn't love, the grief would be grief. Grief, this guttural, animalistic wound to the soul that, shapes and shifts who we are. And so for me, when I think of love, I think of John Lennon,
Mm,
right? And others who fought to not fight. And there's the irony, right? Like to approach division and hatred and fear with love, it dissolves, it dissipates. It's really hard to be angry when someone is loving you up, right?
Powerful. Yeah, very powerful. It's an empowering concept as well at a time when we feel powerless.
yeah,
Exactly.
that's a great point. The Yeah, I think we're onto something healthy anytime you're finding things that you feel are empowering you. Also, I think you're onto something healthy anytime you are in alignment with reality, and as we've been naming, reality is change, movement, so
And love, that's it.
and love. And and by the way, the my tradition says God is love, so it's not like you're being anti-biblical if you care about the Bible, and there's a lot of other traditions that say that too, so I think you're probably doing good work. Hmm.
You guys are great. This is always so fun.
Right?
I love this.
We love this. We're gonna do this again next year.
Let's do it. Let's
It
do
would
it.
be great to any other comments that are coming in, Jonathan, from people. I'm so sad to hear of some of the losses. I can't
Yeah.
read the messages, but just
Yeah.
to the person who shared that his brother-in-law died, like, love to know his name and letting you know that I'm sending you some love.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if, Scott mentioned his name. He didn't, but his
Mhm.
brother-in-law was 60 and died without warning
Oh,
last
Wow.
week, so,
Oh, wow.
Scott, we're thinking of you and a few others that have come on. I mean, everyone who's on here.
We're thinking of
It's
everybody, and we're thinking
Yeah,
of everybody's and everybody's loved ones.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
to name it all out, all the loved ones that are present in this conversation, just to honor them, to honor their life, to honor the ongoing effect that they're having just even through this conversation. That we wouldn't all be together if it weren't for them. Like
that's
that's
right,
something beautiful. That's really
that's right,
so I honor them all.
that's
Thank
right.
you. And just,
Yeah.
thanks for your life.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's interesting, isn't it? We wouldn't be here without those folks, so I think every ending is somehow weirdly attached to a new beginning. That's that's just the reality of love and the world, so, yeah, I wanna lean into that, and I think, Dina, you said early on, maybe before we went to live, you were talking about how dark it is, and I've been noticing that too, so I feel I feel the darkness outside the window, so I think I'm gonna try to think of that as a type of covering, and especially going into the
Mhm.
next few weeks and this hopeful season that is full of all kinds of grief. The world's out of control, but love is still with us, so maybe there's a chance, maybe there's still hope.
There absolutely is, and when we light a candle, it doesn't feel so dark, right?
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me again. Wisdom of Grief, Grief Unleashed. Hope you guys will follow Dina and Leslie on Substack. There are a couple of friends that I've developed on, I at least have two friends on Substack, so that's good. I got that going for me.
And you, Jonathan, in your beautiful book of
Uh,
poetry.
Yeah.
thank
It's
you.
such a beautiful book, really.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I've added it to my Christmas list, so
Nice.
depends
Nice.
depends if the tariffs are gonna make it too expensive for my kid to go. Sorry.
Well, if they do, let me know and I'll just shoot you a PDF and
Okay. No, well, no. I wanna
we
honor
can make
the
we can make that happen, but
I like
yeah.
having hard copy of things. It just feels visceral in my
Yeah.
hands. Can I just say how grateful I am? This has been, I don't
Yeah.
even know the word. It's just so delightful to be with other grief friends who aren't afraid to talk about life. And as we've talked about or noticed today, it's like when we talk about grief, we talk about love.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, thanks, Diane. She says the solstice is the 21st. So
Yes.
few more dark days and then it'll start getting light
Coming.
again.
Yeah.
Exactly. Here's
Good hope.
hoping.
That's right. All right.
All
Thanks,
right.
ladies.
Well,
Thanks,
listen,
everybody.
Bye, you
this has
guys. Thank
been
you
All right.
so much.
Take care.
okay. See you soon. Bye.